job. Bernie Gallerini, Mastermind with Neil Schwartz and Bernie from Tennessee. Woo! Good job, buddy.
Your favorite place, Neil?
It's a flyover state, right?
I know, I remember that.
It's really interesting. And I've said dumb things like that before. I guess I'll say them again. But, you moved to Tennessee how many years ago?
18.
So 18 years ago from, you were in California first and then Vegas. Is that how it went?
Yep. I moved here from Vegas, but originally from California.
Originally from California, and moved to Tennessee for a better life for you and your family. Little did you know that it was going to be a spectacular life, because basically you're selling all the properties in Tennessee right now. You brought all the buyers with you.
Yeah. It's when we moved here, it was a fairly sleepy area, and I appreciate your flyover remark, but it has since become one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So when you moved to Tennessee, you moved there with virtually no past client or sphere or family, I don't think, did you?
Nope. Didn't know anybody here.
What brought you to Tennessee? What took you? I mean, you were making money in Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was making money. Well, I mean, I don't know what you call money anymore. I mean, if you asked me if I was making money in Vegas at the time, I was making probably, in the very low $100,000 price per year kind of thing. So I was making some money. How's that? But I didn't really understand how to make real money until I got inside of Mike Ferry, learned the skills and the techniques of MFO. So yes, then I actually started making some real money. So that we can put some context to that. So you were making a little over $100,000 a year, 18 or 19 years ago when you moved to Tennessee. That's how much am I correct? Correct.
And last year you grossed, you and your team, how much money?
$9.5 million.
Baby. And how many people? What do you got? 1,000 people on your team?
Well, it depends on, that's probably a little bit of the story. So it depends on the week, because we fire a lot of people. We bring some people in. So anywhere between about 18 to 20 people.
Got it. That was actually when we've talked 2 or 3 times, and I'm one of the lucky ones that happened to find Bernie at the Superstar Retreat walking. I don't know, what was it, 5 o'clock in the morning one day?
Yeah, I think were we in the Venetian maybe?
Something like that. And I was walking one way, he was walking the other way. And so I turned around and kind of tried to keep up with him, and we started chatting. And every retreat we go to now, you'll find us walking the halls of some hotel someplace.
Yep.
About 5 o'clock in the morning. So thanks for that.
I learned all my great stuff from walking with you.
Well, it's interesting because I was going to say the thing.
I exercise and education by walking with you.
Well, it's the same for me. So I appreciate it. You never know who you're going to find at 5 o'clock in the morning. Let me tell you. So really cool stuff. You moved there. Were you connected with Mike Ferry when you moved to Tennessee, or you did that afterwards?
No. So when I moved here in August of 2004, and then I started selling in January of 2005. But during that time, I took some time off, and I bought a house out here and took some time off with my wife and trying to figure out kind of my transition into real estate. But during that time, I started looking online for coaches, and I came across Mike Ferry's name. And so I had interviewed a couple of different coaching companies. And in December of 2004, I signed up with Mike Ferry, and then started coaching with my first coach with MFO that January. So I actually signed up with Mike Ferry before I started selling real estate.
Wow.
Yeah.
And why would you do that? I mean, what was your background to make you comfortable with doing that?
Well, I mean, I'd always been in sales, but my concern was, I was from California, California guy. I'm Italian. I talk really fast. And if you guys haven't been here to the South, they have a really slow draw in their approach. So I thought, man, I'm going to really stand out here. And so the main reason I actually signed up with Mike is I thought maybe they could help me talk the Southern kind of approach. So, we used to have horses and buggies downtown on our main streets. They'd give little rides, horse and buggy rides, and when you leave Vegas and you go to a horse and buggy town, you're like, oh crap, what did I do? So that's why I signed up, is I was kind of concerned that I just wouldn't fit in. So that's why I signed up with Mike, because I just wanted to kind of just be an agent and have somebody maybe give me confidence. I don't know. I mean, what I got out of MFO wasn't really what I thought I was going to get out of MFO. And so when I signed up, I thought, well, maybe somebody can just help me be a better Southern agent when I wasn't from the South. And God, did I know that I still don't fit in as a realtor.
No, you're not the average real estate agent,
No.
Bernie.
No.
No, you're not. Okay. So, interesting. So what did they have you? So when you got there, you didn't know anybody. You didn't have a past client in Sphere Base. You felt like you were a duck out of water. You talk fast. You're this Italian stallion guy. And so what did you do to get business?
Well, because I didn't know anybody, which I guess like anything else, the coach told me to. And this was in the first month and a half or 2 months I was in the business. I didn't have like a dialing system or anything. That stuff wasn't out anyways then, but I didn't know where to get my numbers. So what I did was I went every day into the newspaper and I called all the for sale by owners that were in there. And then I spent most of my days, 7 days a week, just driving around the streets, looking for signs in yards. And then I would knock on the door, or I would just call them. And so I got their information. So that was kind of the first couple of months. And then my coach said, hey, you should look at this thing called, I think it was Red X at the time. He says, you'll see all your expireds in there. Because what I would do is I would go find the expireds that had expired that day. But then I would go into the crisscross directory and look up the phone number, because I didn't know that there was a system. And so I didn't sell anything for a while. But then I got the Red X program. And when I got that, it was like, wow, this is crazy. All this numbers are like right here. So when I started getting those numbers, then I just called expireds and by owners. I mean, I didn't have any family or friends here, so I didn't know anybody. So the only way I could do business was just call expireds and by owners. And my coach told me, he's like, your job is to put a buyer and seller together every day. And one thing is that an expired is telling you, hey, I had an agent that couldn't get the job done. I'm interviewing. And a buy owner puts a sign in the yard and says, I'm interviewing an aggressive agent, so you need to go talk to those people. So that's what I did. It took me, my first for sale by owner I listed in February. I listed for 4%, Neil. And then I gave 3% away, so I made 1%. My second for sale by owner I hired, which my first two listings, was another 4%er, give away 3, collect 1. My first 6% commission was on a $70,000 listing, 70,000. Yes, they have 70 back then. Anyway, they had $70,000. And I got that one for 6%. And I remember how happy I was. I actually called my wife and went, you're not going to believe this. I got this one for 6%. What's cool though, is I double into that deal, but it took me 5 months to close my first deal from when I started. So I was 5 months, but the good news was when I closed my first deal, I had 8 pendings at that time. So I knew that the system worked. So I didn't know anybody. I just did what Mike's coach told me to do, called expireds, called buy owners. I didn't know whether it was good or bad or anything. I didn't know that people had problems doing that. Like, I didn't realize that the resistance of agents calling people was an issue. So I just kind of did what they told me to do. And I did it and it worked.
At a really, really high level, maybe one of the highest levels in the country.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, my first year I sold 40 houses. And then, it took me a few years to get to 100. And then, my best year was like 160.
Got it. And what is your team doing now?
It's about 720, 730.
720.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. So for some of the agents here, I mean, we're talking, what did you do in the beginning? And this is great. And well, I want to focus on for a second, and then I'm going to jump over. What was the hunger? What was I mean, you weren't making money. You were only working for 1% on a $70,000 house. So you're making $700. Well, how much was the rent, your rent, or I'm assuming you rented at that time?
I had a home in Vegas, and I sold that property, and I bought a home out here. I had a mortgage payment on it and stuff like that. And so what was my hunger? Interesting. I guess I have to go back to the very beginning, which I'll spend 60 seconds doing that. I grew up in HUD housing my entire life. So my mom was a Section 8 person, and she raised 4 kids by herself. And so we didn't have a car or anything like that. So I always kind of thought that maybe, you know, my life meant something more than where I came from. So I think that I always had that desire to try to prove myself. When I got into real estate, though, it was the first time I actually really believed that I could become wealthy. And when I started to believe that I could become wealthy, then I became obsessed, because I realized that whatever this means to anybody, that my life would mean something other than where I came from. And so I had 2 little girls at home at the time, and my wife, and you know, what other motivation does a human being have other than trying to feed their kids? And so I was told by my coach that this is probably one of the hardest things I'll ever do to succeed at a high level. And if I was willing to put in the time. And I remember he and I talking about it, and he says, you know, I'm going to say something to you. You're not going to like it, but it's the truth. And if you get it in your mind, you'll be rich. I said, all right. He says, I need 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 1 straight year. He says, if you give me that, I will show you how to become a millionaire. So that's what I did. I had 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for 1 straight year. And then I started kind of tapering back. And then, you know, it got to the point where I was even selling, you know, 150, 160 homes a year. I was working 35 hours a week. So I was selling a lot more houses, working a lot less hours than I was to sell 40 my first year.
But you needed that jumpstart, that momentum, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hardest thing to even teach my group, because the challenge with, and even with some of your agents potentially, you know, somebody goes out and makes 100,000 or 200,000 or 300,000, whatever you pick the number, they think they're rich. And they're like, well, you know, I don't have to go to work, or I don't need to go to work, or I want to enjoy my life, or I want this, or I want that. And it's like, they want the enjoyment before they actually really see a massive level of success. So I looked like this. I just looked something up while we were on there, because I always tell my team, we're the Navy SEAL of real estate. And so I just looked up, the Navy SEAL is 1% of all of the military, and the Navy military is 1%. There's 2,450 Navy SEALs in the United States. And they occupy 1%. And so I always kind of treated my life as if I was an elite athlete, or if however an athlete would perform. If you were in the NFL, or if you were a professional tennis player, or whatever it might be, and you want to make all that money, what kind of time are you going to put into that practice if you knew all that was an opportunity for you? So I teach my group a little bit of this, and that is, we're the Navy SEALs of real estate. Most will never do it. Most will try and fail. We're not looking for agents. We are looking for elite people. And why was my group so small? I mean, we're averaging 36 deals per agent right now on our team. Why are we so elite? Is because we have an elite system with an elite level of accountability. And my mindset is that way. If you came to work in my office, and no offense or anything to anybody over there, but if you came to work in my office, you'd be gone in 1 day, because you would go, I don't understand how they even do that. Because because the thing is, they have to show up every day. Like in my world, because I know we're independent contractors, but in my world, you have to be here every day at 8:30. If you don't, you cannot work that day in my company. Not 8:31. If you walk in at 8:31, you got to go home. So we don't, if you have kids and you're like, well, I got to drop my kids off, then this is not for you. If you have to leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because then we won't hire you. If you're not in the interview process, I tell my agents, again, this is just my personality is this. So I project this on my group. And some of you guys are like, man, thank God I don't work for Bernie. Yeah, but I have agents making $1 million a year. So when you look at this and say, okay, well,
on a low split.
yeah, I have agents selling 100 houses a year, 70, 80, 90 homes. A lot of them are doing really well. And so you look at this and you say, why would anybody want to work for Bernie? Because they're rich. And so I only want to find people who want to be rich. If you don't want to be rich, then don't be around me, because I'm not a person that really wants to tolerate somebody that doesn't care to really be an exceptional human being. And I don't really want to be around somebody who doesn't really want to have a fantastic life. And I don't want to be around somebody who doesn't say, I want to be a millionaire. And so to find that, Neil, in a human being is very difficult, which is why we only have 20.
Right. You're only going to get a small number of people that are going to go through that filter. But when you get that person that goes through that filter, you've got a ton of diamonds.
That's exactly right. And so we don't want to be the biggest. Our goal is never to be the biggest. We are the #1 real estate company in this area, regards to volume per agent area. So in the MLS, I'm the #1 real estate agent in the area. But that doesn't really mean a whole lot. We have a really great people, but we would rather be 20 than 80. Matter of fact, we don't want to be 80. We never want to be 80. That's not our goal. Our goal is to find the most productive human being we can that wants to excel at the highest level. We're looking for the Navy SEAL, but in the real estate business.
I love it. Well, you articulated that very, very well. So Bernie, you started making a living, and you did well making a living, 40 transactions, moving it up to soon 100. But 700, where does that come from? Because you've got to totally change your mindset and your business's mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where did that come from? I mean, did your wife say she needed some more cool purses or what?
No, it was just the opposite, actually. I don't know, we were somewhere at, probably 200 or 300 units. And, my wife said to me one day, she's like, I don't really understand like how much more you need. I said, because, we're making lots of money at that point, and well over 7-figure incomes. And, and I said to her, I said, for me, it's not about money. I mean, probably a lot of people, I don't have to work anymore or anything, but to me, it's about how can I continue to keep improving my life and pushing something beyond where I am, which is why money is irrelevant. If I made $500,000 a year, it wouldn't matter. If I made $5 million a year, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that I keep growing as a human being. And so the challenge now, Neil, for us is to say, what's the next level for us? Where do we go from here? How do we do 1,000? How do we do 2,000? How do we do 3,000? I hang out with a lot of team owners that I have a really good friend of mine who has a team up in Washington, D.C., and she netted 4.7 million last year. And so you look at that and go, well, why can't I do it? I mean, I know her really well. She's no different than me, right? And so I mastermind with them and figure out, kind of what they're doing and learning from them. And I love problem solving. Like, people are like, man, you deal with a lot of problems. Well, when you're selling 700 or 800 homes a year, you got a lot of problems, but I love that. I love solving issues and problems, and things come up. And so that really what drives me to continue to keep growing. So money's really not it anymore. Don't get me wrong. I accept the money. I like the money. I'll receive the money. And part of getting up and doing it is watching your portfolio and your retirement grow. But I don't do it for the money anymore.
It's a challenge for you.
I love as a human being to grow. You guys are taking notes, write this. One of the 6 human needs we have is growth. And kind of what I'm saying to you is, if you aren't growing as a human being, you're actually probably not a happy human being, because that's a need. You actually have a need, and there's a need of significance, right? There's a need of growth. And as a human being, you might say, well, I don't need to grow. I'm pretty happy with what I have. And I would argue that with you. And I would say, no, you actually can sell yourself on that idea, but it's actually a human need. It's a human need that we feel like we're expanding as a person. It doesn't mean you have to make more money. That's not what I'm talking about. But are you growing physically? Are you growing spiritually? Are you growing financially? Are you growing in your relationships with your family and your kids? You're like, well, I'm totally investing in my kids because I want to have a great relationship with my kids. Then you're growing.
Right.
So we have a need to grow. And so, Neil, what I'm saying to you is for me, what I'm learning about myself is if I'm growing financially, that's great. But if I'm building a really strong relationship with my wife, that's way better, right? If I have a really love interested life with my kids and I'm growing in that bondage with them, then I'm more blessed than any dollar I could ever earn. So as a human being that focuses on growing, I say this to Mike Ferry all the time because Mike and I still coach with Mike now. I think Mike and I have been coaching together for almost 7 years or something. But I said, Mike, it's interesting because you create a monster when we start to realize the power of our brain. And Mike continues to instill that power in our head. All we want to do is grow as a human being. And sometimes, for some of us anyway, selling 150 or 60 or 70 homes a year, you kind of run out of some time there, right? Your time becomes an issue. And so we build teams, right? We build teams. And so we empower other people, and we're brainwashing other people to say, hey, you can really accomplish some amazing things if you just kind of follow this MFO method. So I would just say, for everybody here, work on figuring out how you keep improving something in your life.
Constant and never-ending improvement, right?
Forever, till we take our last breath.
For absolutely. Good stuff. Okay, so let me ask you a question here, a little off topic. What book or books do you think are important that in your life, in your recent life, you give away? It's a book that you think that's that important that you give it away. You either give it away physically and buy the book for somebody, or you really promote it.
Being the Solution by Daryl Rutherford.
You had to think about that for a minute, huh?
Oh, no, I don't ever have to think about it. What does this say right here? Can you guys read that?
What am I being right now?
It says, who am I being right now? It sits on my desk. It's framed. Comes from that book. And Who Am I Being by Daryl Rutherford. It's probably, I read about 30 to 50 books a year. I'm on a quest to read 50 books this year, but I read about 30 to 50 books a year on all sorts of different things. That's my number one book. I've read, I don't know, I'm going to say 500 books. Let's just say, I don't know, a lot. It's an easy read, but it really changed my life in that understand. And I'll just give you a little premise of the book, and I think everybody should get it. You live in a box, and inside the box that you live is all of your comfort of life. What does that mean? Your income, your home, your relationship, everything that is comfortable for you is inside that box. Desires that you may want to have outside that box is your uncomfortable zone. So I'll say it this way. Some of you guys may disagree, but I'll say it this way and we can talk about it. But everything you want is outside because you want something you don't have. And the challenge is, what's it going to take for you to go outside that box and get it? And that's called risk or fear, or what you want to call it, right? False evidence appearing real. So you're saying, I'd love to have that. I'd love to have that house. I'd love to have that life. I'd love to have that relationship. I'd love to have a business that sells 50 homes a year or whatever. So whatever you want is on the outside, but you're so fearful of having it that you stay in your comfort zone, which is inside that box. So what Daryl Rutherford would say is, who are you being? Are you being a comfortable human being who lives inside that box? Or are you willing to take a little bit of a risk? And so if you take a little risk, okay, you jump outside that box, all of a sudden you've gone to another level. So write down, I want to go to another level. And then that level then creates a different box. You buy a nicer house, you have a little bit more money, you have a better relationship. Then you're like, well, hey, did you see the house that Cindy just bought or John just bought? Well, that's a really nice house. I love that neighborhood. I wouldn't pay that kind of money. And then you go back into fear. right? But I love what Mike always says, connect the dots, right? Connect the dots. Look where you came from and where you are, but you can also connect the dots to where you want to go. And so being the solution really made me realize that I was trapped in Section 8.
Interesting. Interesting.
Trapped, yeah, I was trapped in poverty. I was trapped, not just my mind was in comfort of saying, I'm not willing to take a risk. And when I read that book, and by the way, I read that book 17 years ago. It was February of 2006. And my friend Eric Elgato gave me that book out of San Diego. And I got on an airplane and I read it when I got home. And by the time I landed off that airplane and I got home, I couldn't even, I was jumping out of my skin. And I said, my life will never be lived through fear. And that's when I took off. My whole life changed from reading that book. So Being the Solution by Darren Rutherford, very easy read too, by the way. It's 280 pages, I think, but big bold print.
Great, thank you, Bernie. I appreciate that a lot. Okay, you grew mentally. You had to put together a team, a system. You've been working on stuff, but what caught my attention was recently when we were talking was the fact that I said, what did you do with the business recently? How did you change it? And I was a little bit shocked because you had said to me, you stopped your team, you looked at the marketplace, you stopped your team, and you retrained your people to look at today's market and forget about what they had, a year ago. Talk to us about that.
I had 37 agents. Probably this time last year, I had 37 agents, and I looked at, we were in June, I think, and I looked at the company and I went, okay, who here do I think has the grit to survive in this market? Number two, I looked at him and said, who do I want to spend my time fighting this battle with? Like, who do I think is the most coachable to fight through this battle? Because I knew we were going to war. And we were going to war because I had to spin around everybody's mindset. Remember, I started in 2005, but in 2008, the market shifted. The 08 market shifted. And so I had to go to battle. I had to go battle with myself and what I needed to do to accomplish my goals. And I knew that I needed to find really strong people. So I had 37 agents and I picked 18 agents and I fired the rest. Asked them to leave the company. I told them I couldn't help them. That I thought that they should move their license to another place. I gave them some names that I thought that would be good fits for them. And then I took that 18 people and I just started dousing them with Mike Ferry messages regarding mindset. Started telling them that stop watching the news, don't listen to any of that crap. There's going to be 5 million sales in the country, and how many of those sales do you guys want to get? And it took me about 5 months. And here we are, usually typically pending about 70 or 80 homes a month on my team. And we fought through the battle. I got rid of some different people, hired some different people. We hire and fire every week. So right now, how we looked at it is we have a building right now that has 21 chairs in our company. If
I know what's coming, the game, musical chairs.
Yep. So here's what's really confusing for most people. I just moved in a 12,000 square foot building, and I've got about 3,500 square foot of empty space right behind my prospecting center. It's all part of it. It's just big open space where my agents all work. So I've got about 3,500 square feet in the back, and all the agents are thinking, man, we got plenty of room to expand. And I'm going, no, we're not expanding. I got 21 chairs and I'm not buying a desk or a chair for one person until everybody hits a minimum standard of 24 deals in my company. So what I do, Neil, and I do this all the time, if I decide I'm going to hire a new agent, I then have to fire an agent.
Wow. Good
because
for you.
I'm not buying another desk or another chair for somebody who doesn't hit the minimum standards inside of our company. So, well, here's what's interesting. We let people go and do 18, 19 deals a year. We fire them. Say they can't be on our team anymore because you've been here for 2 years minimum standard is 24. So you have to go. And it's never fun. It's never pretty, but I'm in the business to have Navy SEALs. I'm not, in the Navy SEAL program, guys, if you know anything about it, they try to break you down. They literally try to break you down. And our system is a little like that. And that is, you will do 24 deals on our team. If you do, if you do 18 or 19 in a year, that's okay. But if you do 18 or 19 in year 2, and we have to fill that seat, you're the one that we go. So what's really interesting though, Neil, is I have 2 right now that are hovering in that part of the company. And they typically know 6 months before we let them go that they're on the chopping block. So it's not a surprise at all. We typically, after about 90 days before we know we're going to be getting rid of them, we take them out of personal coaching, because I coach everybody. And so because I coach everybody, I actually pull them out of my schedule, and I sit down with them and like, listen, I'm pulling you out of my schedule. They know what that means. What can I do to get back? I said, you got to sell houses. And then I pull them out of my schedule, and then they know it's coming. Nobody wants, what's really interesting though, nobody wants to leave. Like I'm telling you, they don't leave. We can't, people don't leave our company. You think, well, God, how hard is that to work for his company? If you're here 12 months and you're making $400,000 a year, and you know that nobody in your market, I'm not talking, by the way, I'm not talking about gross, I'm talking about net, in your pocket, pre-tax dollar. I love agents that go, oh, I made 500 grand last year. Well, I'm not talking about your gross money, I'm talking about your net money. Oh, I made 250. Or I made 300,000. Okay, I have agents doing that on my splits, which are very favorable to the company. So, what I want to say to you guys is, yes, it's harsh, but they're all really financially well off. And so, when they get here and they survive that 12 months, they don't leave. Never. Like, I haven't had an agent leave my company in years.
That's fantastic, Bernie. Kind of quickly here, some of the chatter in the chat box is that you have to balance your life, and it's, making a lot of money and working a lot of hours isn't the end all to be all. I want to make sure everybody understands that, as I recall, maybe it has changed, you're done pretty early in the day, right?
Yeah. Can I say something though that might piss some people off?
Please.
I love that. You're going to say it anyway. I always love people say that, because that's usually your lowest producing people that sit there and go, well, money's not the biggest thing. And, what are you giving up? It's like, I always find that the lowest producing people make the biggest comments that way. When I was making $2 million a year selling houses, I worked 35 hours a week. I had more time. I was at every single dance recital that my kids were in. I was at every basketball game that they danced at or did cheerleading at. I was at every high school function. I never missed one thing when my kids grew up, not one thing. So it's really, what I'm saying is, we can use excuses when we don't have it. We can use excuses when we don't have it, but until you actually live it, you'll never know how great it really can be to really excel at a high level and still have a ton of free time.
It's fantastic.
And one of the things I do, Neil, in my company, I do this for my company. Each of my agents that are on my team, they have to take 4 weeks of vacation a year. They have to take 1 week every 90 days. For 1 week every 90 days, they cannot work in my company. We make sure that they have at least 2 days off every week. So if they're working with buyers on the weekends or whatever it might be, they get to take the 2 days off during the week. I would say that my average agent here works about, if you're lower end on the production side, you're probably putting in 50 to 55 hours a week. If you're on the top end, you're probably putting in about 40.
Got it.
So it's by the way, it's a regular job.
Yeah.
Love it. The problem with realtors, and this is the challenge. And again, I'm not trying to upset anybody, but we interview agents all the time. Why'd you get in the real estate business? I love the free time. Sorry, you're not for us. I want to call my own shots. You're going to be a low producer. So again, this is not our style. If I sound a little brash or a little forward on this, I don't care. I'm sorry that if I insult you, but I'm here to make people a lot of money. That's my job. And the ones that I have in my company, want to make a lot of money. And if they want to make a lot of money, then I get a chance to coach them and train them. And I also get a chance to share with them that life's not all about money. Life's about families and relationships and building relationships with your spouses and your kids. So if any one of them walked in this door and sat down and talked to you, they would go, Bernie talks about it being a business like all about money, but money is a small portion of what we really teach. It's really about how to become a better human.
Awesome. Bernie, you open for a few questions?
Yeah.
All right. So questions for Bernie. Let's go. Fire him away. Fire him away. Take him off.
Bernie. Hi, Bernie. It's Melinda. Hey, what are some of your standards that you hold people accountable to?
Yeah, it's really basic too, guys. It's really interesting. So they have to be here at 8:30. They have to be on role play. Our role play starts at 8:30, so they have to practice in role play. So we do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We do in-office role plays. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do Zoom role plays, just like this. So one-on-ones for themselves 3 days a week. And then they get to hear a live role play on a Zoom call so everybody can hear the skills. That happens at 8:30, so they have to be on that call. If they are not on that call, they get turned off on their company leads for that day. They can work inside they can work within the structure of the company. They just can't work with the company leads that day. You have to have a minimum of 100 contacts through our system, which means that you have to show us inside of our software that you actually talk to 100 people. How we know that to be true or not true, because they will all lie. Buyers are liars and sellers are too, so are agents. So
Is that 100 per day or 100?
100 for the week. They get 7 days to make 100 contacts. And inside of our system, it's usually about 300 phone dials, 320. So that has to happen every week. And then on Monday mornings by 10 a.m., every agent has to have their number analyzer up to date. So their contacts, their pendings, everything has to be updated, because I coach every single person in the company and I use the Mike Ferry number analyzer to do that. If you do not have that updated, then you're off leads for the entire week. You have to have a closing percentage of 6% or better inside the company, or you get shut off of leads. And you have to have at least 2 closings per month, or you get shut down off of leads.
Love it. Great question.
2 hours of prospecting in our office, 2 hours every day. So if you don't log those 2 hours inside of our system, then you get shut down.
Good stuff. Bernie, what are the lead sources is one of the questions.
Oh, man. A lot. Zillow, realtor.com. We do a lot of listing lead opportunities too. So we have like seller evaluation widgets that we send out. We have PPC leads that come in. We get about, 3,000 PPC leads that come in a month. We do the same old stuff everyone else does, the 25% referral fees come out of that. We're Dave Ramsey's biggest client here. We probably do 80 to 120 Dave Ramsey deals a year out of our market. He lives in our market actually. So Dave Ramsey is from our market. So we're his top ELP. So we get a lot of business from them. We spend about, it just depends. We're spending a little less this year than we have in years previous. But we spend about $2 million a year in lead distribution.
So, Bernie, I want to go to you were working 35, 40 hours a week when you were making $2 million. So you had more free time, making more money than when you first started. What did that obviously that was you were very tight on your schedule. So walk us through what does a Bernie Gallerini 35 to 40 hour week look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I always prospected from 7:45 to noon every day. I typically would have maybe a 30-minute break in there, 10-minute like mindset breaks in between about every hour or so. That would include all my lead follow-up time inside that time. As I started in the early days, 50 contacts every single day was my minimum standard. And I went down to about 25 to 30. My latter parts of selling, I don't sell anymore, guys. I just run the company, but in my latter parts, it was about 25 or so contacts. But for a majority of my real estate career, 30 was my number. So 4 hours, 30 contacts. That included follow-up time. I typically never went on a listing appointment past 5 o'clock in the evening. I just set it up where I'd either go to their office and present, or I would go if the husband was traveling or the wife was traveling or whatever, I would set the listing appointment, and then I would ask them if I could do the presentation on speakerphone. So I would do the presentation with the wife or the husband there and sign to get the contract signed, like DocuSign, stuff like that. So I really had a controlled schedule. So I just wanted to make sure that I was home every day. You know, I mean, the early days, the beginning stages was typically 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I mean, I did that for lots of years, by the way. But towards the middle and end of it, it would get to the point where I was like, okay, well, and I never worked Saturday, never worked Sunday. After about my 3rd year, never did I take a listing appointment or anything. I only worked listings. I never worked buyers, guys, ever. I mean, I think I might have had 10 buyers in my entire career. I sold 1,600 and plus homes listings a year. I'm sorry, in my real estate career. But I just really kept knocking it down. And then I got to a point where I would work Monday through Thursday from about 7:45 to maybe 5 o'clock. And then I took Fridays off. And then I did that for several years where I worked just 4 days a week.
All right. It's exhausting listening to it. You're the best.
No. Well, I have to be very cautious, Neil, because, you know, I say that because I'm probably a little like Mike a little bit, where I don't, you know, I heard I had a video on this morning, and it was the commencement speech from what's his face, Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey said something that was pretty cool. I'm trying to figure out if I wrote this down on this one or somewhere else, but he talked about is your goal is your goal to be liked? And he says if you want to be liked, you're also invisible.
Interesting.
And he says the reason why is because people that really like to be liked don't ruffle enough feathers to grow forward. And so my upbringing or lifestyle, or we want to look at it, says that my goals and my dreams are powerful enough that I will not let somebody else determine how successful my business is going to be. And so you're either a fit or you're not a fit. And so if I come off very brash and forward, it's just, it's worked for 18 years. And the people inside the company, I mean, I'm sure they'll leave, right? They'll all leave you eventually. But if you were to talk to them, they're just like, I couldn't even imagine where our life would be if we weren't on Bernie's team. Like I say, I don't have any clue of what my life would be had I not met Mike Ferry.
Right. It's a great thought. It's a really great thought. Okay, other questions for Bernie? Let's get ready to go ahead, Tess.
Okay, so I'm just probably going to make a comment, and another would be a question. So I would think that based on your personality, Bernie, okay, you have learned this from your training on Navy SEALs, right? Because you're very precise, you have standards. Is that true?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, with the people that you work with, do they have the same, because you're very direct to the point, which is great, I think, because I'm one too. Do your 20 people have the same personality as you?
No.
No. Okay.
I have amiables, expressives, analyticals. But I think that what they're here for is they see all these other agents. So unlike maybe how you guys may operate, and again, I don't know how you operate, but we all work together. So we're all in the same building every day together. And so what they're doing is they're building relationships with other people, but they're also seeing success in other people, depending on like whatever their personality style is. So I would say, yes, I'm obviously the fearless leader in the company, but there are successful analyticals and successful amiables in here also. I wouldn't want to be in a room full of a bunch of me's, actually, to be honest with you.
All right.
I like being the alpha dog in the building. And so, you know, I can't reach into others. We have some alpha dogs in here, don't get me wrong. But But no, I would say they're no different than your guys' office. We have a mix of all sorts of different personalities. The only difference is, guys, it's not like we don't pound this in their head. We just set the accountability measures, and then we just abide by the accountability measures. So if somebody says, hey, I hit traffic this morning and I got here 10 minutes late, I'm going to say, listen, I totally appreciate it. Traffic happens. We're going to leave you on leads today, but just let you know that if it happens again, maybe you should leave 10 or 15 minutes early every day and just get to the office a little bit earlier. And then if they do it again, when I shut them down, they're like, well, I hit traffic again. I'm like, totally understand. Tomorrow, just leave a little bit earlier, and then that won't have to shut you down. And that's it. That's just how it works. It's not like, we're not sitting there whipping everybody or anything. If they come in, they come in. If they don't, they don't. And we don't care whether they come in.
Mhm.
That's not, our goal is not to care whether you come in. Our goal is not to care whether you do 24 deals. Our job is to say, if you don't come in, you don't get leads. And if you don't do 24 deals, you can't be on our team. And we don't get mad about it. We don't care. We literally have a line of people trying to get inside of our company. I mean, agents all over town are trying to get inside of our group. They all know how we are. Our reputation is exactly what you guys would think our reputation is. But our agents make so much money that everybody wants a piece of what we're trying to create. The only thing is we don't have enough chairs.
That's right. Only 21 chairs.
Mm-hmm.
I got a quick question.
Go ahead, Joey. Joey, you gonna try to buy an extra chair for Bernie?
I'm not sure I follow.
It doesn't. Just making a joke. Sorry.
So quick question. It sounds like at the moment you're buying a lot of leads, but what I want to do is take you back to the beginning when you first got to Tennessee and you were working an insane amount of hours, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you were making, a lot of contacts at that time. My question is, if you didn't have a database at that time, what was your criteria for putting someone in there? Like, what were your standards for adding someone into your database and building it?
Gosh, I probably was really bad in those days about a database because I didn't really understand what that was. Mike Fair doesn't really talk about having a bunch of names and numbers in a system. Actually says not to have that. But I'll try to answer your question. If you bought and sold a house from me, you went in my database. If you never bought or sold a house from me, I never put you in my database. I only had past clients in there at the time. And so now remember, the lead distribution and the stuff that we do today, that all evolved in time with team building. So like I had never bought a Zillow lead or anything like that, or Realtor.com lead. I mean, I was selling 100 houses a year and never bought a lead. I didn't put a stamp on an envelope. I never spent any money. I didn't put out one postcard for many, many, many years. I sell well over 100 houses before I ever sent a postcard out. So in time, though, I learned, write this down. Mike says 70% of your business comes from lead follow-up. And I asked Mike an interesting question one day because I was talking with him, and I said, Mike, you always talk about 70% of your business coming from lead follow-up. I'm not experiencing that. And he goes, well, that's interesting. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, what do you on lead follow-up? I'm like, maybe 20%. And he goes, well, how many leads do you have? And I said, I don't know, maybe 6 a day or some 7, 8. I don't know, not a lot. And he goes, well, that's because you close really hard on the initial call. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So what's the percentage of the time that most agents, I'm just asking the question, what's the percentage of the time that most agents accept, write this down the way you want. It's going to be confusing, but what's the percentage of the time an agent chooses a follow-up versus setting an appointment on the first call? He says 99% of the time, the agent chooses a follow-up call when an appointment is actually possible. And then that rolls back to, do I want to be liked? So where I was in confusion with Mike's comment was I don't experience 70%. And his answer is that's because you close on the appointment so hard that you don't have a follow-up call. you only
There-
have an appointment.
Or you have nothing.
Or you have nothing, right? The
Right.
other thing, to answer your question, is I ran the 3-3-3 rule. Call them 3 times, let it ring 3 times for 3 days. If they didn't buy or were not in my car or I wasn't going to their house, I tossed them in the trash.
Great thought. Bernie, how much time in the beginning did you spend role playing and practicing your scripts?
I'm gonna use the word 11 because I remember a lot of times I had 11 role play partners, but I typically had between, let's say, 10 and 15 role play partners per week. And we role played for 15 minutes during those role play sessions. So 10 to 15 a week, and we had that. And I did that for 10 years.
So anywhere from 5 to 8 hours a workday.
Well, when I
That's
say
right.
10 to 15, meaning for the whole week,
Oh, got it.
for the
Okay,
whole week.
got it.
So I
Okay.
might have 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 here every day for that week.
Okay. So you were role playing an hour a day, an hour and a half a day, maybe,
Yeah.
certain things?
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
then what I did was I went through lots of exercise, like I hand wrote Mike Ferry's listing presentation scripts several hundred times. And then I would have like accountability partners, Neil. So you might say to me, hey, you want to write the listing presentation out? And I'm like, yeah. And how many times should we do it? Well, let's do it 120 times, 120 days. So 4 months. We're going to hand write the listing presentation every day. And you and I might write a check for $5,000 or $10,000 and swap it and go, okay, well, you want to show it to each other. We see each other at Superstar Retreat or whatever. So I always hand wrote scripts, typically handwriting expired by owner scripts. We'd write that 3 to 5 times a day, did that for 6 months or whatever it might be. So to internalize all the scripts, I mean, even to this day, I haven't been on a listing appointment for years, but going to listing mode, I could tell you where every dot is, where every question mark is. Fantastic, good for you. You know, Fantasyland reality. I mean, it's so ingrained in our head that that's what also caused a really great close ratio, was the scripts were so embedded in our brains. And all of us top Mike Ferry agents doing it. I mean, all the ones that were selling 150, 200 homes a year, were all treating their business this way. That I hung out with anyway.
Right. Okay, let's everybody give Bernie a big hand. Woo! All right. Good job. Amazing, buddy. Amazing. Exhausting, but amazing. I love it. 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 You are, I can't even imagine 2 alpha males in the same building with you.
That's why I lock myself in the office and try to stay in here most of the time. So we don't have anything other. But guys, hey, listen.
Wow,
I'll say
that's
this for you.
great.
Well, you know, in the end of this, I'll just say this, guys. Yes, it may sound a little strong. Yes, this group is fairly strong. But I want to ask you this. Do you want to be an elite person? Or do you just want to be another realtor? Because there's like, whatever, 1.5 million or 2 million, whatever there is in the country. Here's an interesting, Neil, you know this. 50% of every licensed there's 1.7 million licensed agents, but 50% of every licensed realtor in the United States didn't sell a house last year, not one.
That's a fact.
That is a fact.
That's a
And
fact.
8% of that 1.7 million, which is 125,000 people, 125,000 realtors out of 1.7 million sold more than 4 homes last year. 1.7 million licensed agents, 125,000 of that 1.7 million sold more than 4 homes. I had an agent last month close 14 on my team last month.
I love it, baby.
All right,
Somebody
guys.
wrote down here, Bernie's a badass.
No.
That's true.
You guys are awesome. Be a Navy SEAL. Everyone have a good day.
I love it. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, Bernie, is we're going to go around the room for a few minutes and kind of talk about what we learned. I know that you've got things to do and appointments to go to, but you're welcome to hang out, or I'll see you in I guess, 2 months?
I think he split.
Well, he's good.
He has a schedule.
He's good.
He's gone,
Okay,
man. He's gone.
good stuff. Very, very
I was like,
cool.
Batman, he's just gone.
He's just gone. Okay, so what did we learn? By the way, I have never had a guest split so fast, but I don't know that I've ever had a guest earn gross $10 million a year. So maybe there's a correlation. I don't know. Go figure. What did we learn today? What did we learn?
It's all about standards for
Standards.
himself and his team.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Good. What else?
That was
99
intense.
Go ahead. Savannah
99%.
and then Jack.
99% of agents choose a follow-up call rather than closing when there's a closing in there.
Yeah, that's a great statistic. Great statistic. Jack, go ahead.
No, that was a very, very intense call. Just him talking about things. That was intense.
Absolutely. Very intense. Good stuff.
No,
How'd you like?
Neil, what I got is, to Melinda's point on standards, but the specific standard is he doesn't want to surround himself with people that don't want to be millionaires, that don't want to be successful. He just refuses to talk to people like that, to be around people like that. It's just not part of his thing. And I think that is a very valuable trait that you need to constantly look at who you're surrounding yourself with, because you say all the time, people are either an example or a warning. So are the people you're surrounding yourself with, are they an example of you trying to push, or are they a warning that they're trying to keep you at the same level or maybe even lower? Because that guy, no, that ain't gonna work for him.
Well, when I say you are where you are because it's okay with you, he has drawn the line. Nothing below this, whatever this is okay with him. Period. End of conversation. Let's go for it. And yet most of us, we go for it. We allow it. Excuse me. We allow it. We don't go for it. So think about that. All right. What else did we learn today?
Neil, I love the fact that he talked about the book and how he explained you live in a box, because I never saw it that way, but it's so true. When I came into your office, I was in my box, my comfort level, my comfort zone, and then you get a little bit bigger, and then the next year get a little bit bigger, and then you still go back to the same. You feel comfortable in your box, and you revert back to fear. And
we talked about that earlier today, didn't we?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, that's a great example.
Well, he really, as they say, opened the kimono when he said that, he grew up in Section 8 housing. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's not terrific. And it was him and the 4 kids, or his mom and 4 kids. And he didn't have any money. There was no money. And he doesn't want to go back there. He will not go back there. It's not okay. And yet for half of his life, half of his adult life, he was making decisions based on that kid who was living still in Section 8 housing. So it's interesting. I used to, I came from Pico Rivera, and I used to, when people would compliment me and say, wow, you've done really well, congratulations, I would say, yeah, not bad from a poor little Jewish boy from Pico Rivera. Well, I used to say that 4, 5, 6, 10 times a day when people would compliment me. And then one day I realized that that's a negative self-fulfilling prophecy, and I stopped it. Absolutely just cut it out, because I didn't want to be that. I didn't, Pico Rivera is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I didn't want to be mentally associated with that and move on. I actually, when Mike compares his growing up in Garden Grove to my growing up in Pico Rivera, I actually get a teeny shudder when he brings it up, because that's how I don't even drive through Pico Rivera, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. If I have to go to a meeting and it's in Pico Rivera, I don't go. All right. Not for the last 15 years. So that's the deal. So you make your decisions and figure this out. Okay. What else did we learn today?
I say it. He wants to be exceptional, and he lives by growing every day to expand himself. That's huge.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and on
Yeah.
that point, Neil, he talked about how we have to constantly improve until we take our last breath. And, he mentioned how you and I talk about this all the time, the disease of complacency. And he mentioned, sometimes you have agents make $100,000 and they feel rich because they've never had $100,000 before, or they make Centurion and they've never made Centurion before, and then they almost never make it the next year because of complacency. And here's a guy that is, making millions and millions of dollars a year, and he's still in his head thinking, I got to improve every day. So imagine if we had that same mentality every day of what am I going to improve on today? What am I going to do in my life today that's going to make me better than I was yesterday? How much better would you be over the course of 1 year, just simply doing that every day for a year, let alone extrapolating that over years and years?
Yep. It's good stuff, Robert. Excellent. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Caesar, go ahead.
getting a little bit back to that idea. It's like we cannot be a good real estate agent if we are not growing or getting better as a human being. And the same as we cannot sell more units if the service we provide, the value we provide, is not up to par of the payment that we are receiving. So it's kind of, let's focus on the really important thing and just not focus on the surface level.
I like it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. This will be posted here in the next day or two. I would listen to it quite often. Look, you don't have to want to do 700-800 transactions a year. Although if you don't, I'd like to talk to you. But okay, no, I'm just kidding. But there's a mindset thing here. There's a growth thing. It's very interesting. When I'm very fortunate. That's another example of just asking. He's walking, I'm walking, we're in the Venetian. It's got to be 10 years ago. Hey, Bernie, hey, Neil, blah, 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 blah. Hey, do you mind if I walk with you? No, we've been walking ever since. If you don't ask, you don't get. Get it? If you don't ask, you don't get. I cannot tell you how valuable that hour and a half is, every morning. And I won't miss it. I go out of my way to make sure if he says 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd be up and I would be out there doing it. That's how important it is. Find people like that in your lives, ladies and gentlemen. Do it. Okay, Robert, who's up?
Well, we have a fun-filled rest of our day.